Hi, this is Diane Mourglia-Swerdlow, expansions.com. Welcome to another edition of Cooking with Janet. I have lots of fun things for you today, some healthy, some but it's fun to do different things once in a while, so I'm going to show you what I have planned for you today and we'll get going. First thing I want to do is I want to talk to you about making broth. I have told you about chicken broth before, so today I'm going to do turkey broth, and not that it's really any different, but since I have it here and since maybe you missed that podcast or you've forgotten about it, I want to remind you that this is something that you can do that's very easy. So here I had a roasted turkey and I pulled all my turkey bones apart. I'm going to put them in my pan here and dump them in. Now, usually around the holiday season, I purchase 2 or 3 turkeys. I put them in my freezer and take them out from time to time because we do like turkey. And it makes a really nice broth. So these are our leftovers from the other night. You get to see right straight from the bag. And once I get my bones in, then I just cover them with water and turn the stove on and let them simmer for a while. So that's where I'm going to start you with. Now, I'm very fortunate that I have a bunch of dogs, so that after I do all this, anything that's left, let me grab a little bit more water. Anything that's left, the dogs will eat. So after I pick my bones clean, but there's a lot of nutrition in and around the bones, and so I want to pull that out. Now, you may think, well, I'm one person or I'm 2 people, a turkey is a lot. But you can do a lot of interesting things with turkey, and that's one thing I want to show you. Besides the broth, when this is done, this will go into my freezer if I don't use it. I also have a leftover turkey breast here, just a half side of one, and I'm going to show you something interesting to do with your turkey breast. But while this is simmering, I'm going to let that go for a little bit. I also have from the bottom of my turkey roasting pan some of the juices here, which I am going to add at some point to my soup, but I'm not sure at what point. But we want to keep everything that's got the good nutrition in it for use. We want to waste as little as possible, and that's why I said I'm thankful for my dogs, because they will eat some things that I don't particularly care to eat, but are probably nice and healthy for you. So let's let this simmer a minute. Let me wash my hands and clear some of this so you can see what's going on in the rest of my kitchen. Now, the turkey pate that I'm going to be making later is also similar to what you can do with chicken. So I will tell you a little bit about that as we go along. Let me get this out of the way so you can see the next wonderful thing I'm going to show you. This is going to be a very, very recipe for bread. Let me grab my yeast. I have that in the refrigerator. Okay, you want to always keep your yeast in the refrigerator. This is a large packet that I buy at my health food store. It runs about $4.50 for this little package. It's a pound. You may think I'll never make that much bread. But the little packets in the grocery stores are often around $3 or $4 for just 3 or 4 tiny packets. So this is the best thing to get if you can find it. Again, about $4.50 for this much yeast. It'll probably last you several years. It may have an expiration date on it. Don't pay any attention to it. As a general rule, the yeast will keep practically forever as long as you keep it in your refrigerator. So I have water boiling. This recipe is so simple. It's called peasant bread. Not pheasant bread, but peasant bread, because it's very simple and it's very cheap. This is organic white wheat flour. So again, you want to be mindful of how much you eat. If you are sensitive to gluten, as I am, it is better to eat the white wheat than the whole grain, because the whole grain is what has the gluten in it. I always flush everything with violet, of course, and I tell my body to prepare. Basically, we should be able to eat anything. So, and I don't eat a lot of bread. I don't really like bread a whole lot, but once in a while I get hungry for it, as you may. And if I want something a little fun to serve, I will make my own bread versus buy it. And I have not really gotten into making breads with alternative grains because I like the way that it rises and always looks so nice to serve. So here I have in my bowl 4.5 cups of the white wheat flour. I have in my bowl 2½ teaspoons of the yeast, and I pour that in. And then the next ingredient is 2 teaspoons of salt. I gotta use good quality sea salt. This is actually cooking salt. In Europe, they use cooking salt plus table salt. This is like a second grade, but it's still full of minerals, and so it's a little heavier, and that's why you see it's a little dark, but I like it. It's the Fleur de Sel brand specifically for cooking. So that goes in the bottom of my cup. And then I put in 1 cup of boiling water, which I've already done. And this is going to melt, or dissolve, I guess is a better word. It's going to dissolve my salt. And into that I put a tablespoon of honey. Now you can use whatever sweetener that you have. Maple syrup was fine. If you have the white sugar, you can use that, brown sugar. And you can get that in organic if you want. It's kind of all the same. Nutritionally wise, sugar's sugar, but I kind of like to use the honey. The sugar is what feeds the yeast and will make it grow, which is the idea when you do your bread. You want your bread to rise and be light and fluffy, although some breads you may want heavier, and sometimes they turn out heavier. You know, it kind of depends on the day, as I have mentioned to you before when making bread. But this is really easy. So again, we have 4½ cups of the flour, 2½ teaspoons of yeast. I have 2 teaspoons of sea salt, 1 tablespoon of honey, 1 cup of boiling water, and then I take room temperature, steam distilled water, and I fill up my cup to make 2 cups of water. And this should be lukewarm, so when you touch it, a little tepid. If it feels too hot, you can stir some air into it, or you can let it sit. If it's too cold, your yeast will not rise. If it's too hot, it will kill your yeast. Some people say around 110 degrees if you're Fahrenheit, if you're using a thermometer. I don't use a thermometer most of the time because it's too complicated for me. I want to keep things simple. So I'm going to stir my yeast in. And I'm going to take this, I'm going to pour it in, and you're going to see how easy this is. This I have made in a, you have seen me use my KitchenAid mixer. I have used that before just to experiment. I have kneaded it. I've done all kinds of things. It doesn't make any difference in how it turns out. So this is fast and this is easy. And I'm sure all of you have a mixing bowl. You have water, you have flour. And God forbid you were ever really hungry, you could do something like this. Easy. Your dough is going to be sticky when you're done. It's not going to look real pretty, and that's okay, because we're not after it. The main thing is not to get it too hot, not to get it too cold. And you know what? If something happens, you're going to have some product. It may not be exactly what you want, but as I said, with bread, it can be that way. Depends sometimes on the day, where you're located with altitude. And we want to keep in mind pattern that wheat is considered the staff of life. Here in the U.S., we don't get as good of quality flour sometimes as you do in other parts of the world, but that's all right. Flush with violet, allow your body to use what it needs and discard the rest. So, this is what it's going to look like when you're done. Sticky and not pretty. But let me show you the next step. Through the magic of television, I have made a little batch earlier, and it is down here, raising. So you can see that even though it started out like this, this is the way it winds up. So it's nice and puffy. The yeast is ground. I'm going to pull this over here, grab a sheet, baking sheet, and I spray it with this is organic Pam olive oil. You may have something better that you like, but it all works. Now the other thing is I've removed my rings, and I'm going to tell you to do that first, because once your hands are in the dough and it's sticky, it's going to get all over your rings, and then it's going to be hard to get out of there. So take your rings off first. Then I take my olive oil and I put a little bit on the top, because this is sticky dough. The oil keeps it from sticking to your hands. So I beat it down just a little bit. Okay. And then I divide it into 2 loaves. Now you can see it's very runny, it's very sticky, and I tell you every time I make this it turns out differently. The main thing is that it's going to taste good. So it's not going to be real pretty on your sheet, but I've never had any complaints when I've served it. So I just take it, and your dough is going to be stretchy. Stretch it out a little bit. I try and do my loaves about the same size, although it usually winds up with one bigger than the other. I don't know why, but that's the way it is. But the closer you can get them to the same size, the more even they will bake. So that's kind of the reason that you do that. So you can see they're very slippery, they're very, you know, look at my hands, oily, yucky, yucky it looks like, but that's the joy of baking. So this is going to go into my sink. Wash my hands again. And I am going to put this away to rise. Now, I've had questions. When I put this in my oven, I have 2 ovens. I have an upper oven and a lower oven. My lower oven is off. So even though I'm sticking it in the oven, because you want it in a nice place where that you're not going to have a lot of draft or air. If you have it too cold, it will again kill the yeast. If you don't have that situation in your home, if you have a corner without any drafts, or you can just lay a kitchen towel over it to kind of keep the warmth in. So whatever works for you. So this is going to go into my lower oven, which is not on, and I'm going to show you the next stage, which is this. So let me pull it out again, just so I guess that's the best thing, so you can compare. And you can see this one sliding a little bit. So this is the first stage. It's already starting to raise. You may be able to tell that. Then from there, it goes into your loaves, which is here. Now it starts to rise. And again, depending on your day, I've had these when I'm done rising them, and it usually takes about an hour, usually roughly an hour from this stage to where I'm going to work with it. Then roughly an hour from here to here. Some days, even in an hour, you can leave it 2. It may not raise much more than this. You're just going to have a denser bread. It's still going to taste delicious, so don't worry if that it doesn't turn out like this. So this is going in here to raise. This is going to go in here to raise. And I have my oven, my upper oven turned on to 425. I'm going to put it in just like this, and it's going to bake about 15 to 20 minutes, depending upon, I'll show you how to tell if it's done. So let me turn my timer on for, I'm going to put 15 minutes and then I'm going to check it. Okay, and while that's happening, checking my turkey broth here. It hasn't boiled yet, but what I want to do is get it to a boiling point. Then I'll just turn it down and let it simmer for a while. And if I don't get exactly where I need it, that's why I left this out, because I'm going to show you how to make a turkey pate, which you can also do with, so I'm removing the skin over the turkey breast. You can also do it with chicken breast if you like. I also make it with my buffalo liver, which is very, very good, although a little bit different recipe, and I'll explain that to you one of these days. So I'm going to take off anything that I don't want in my turkey pate, and that will go to the dogs. And then I'm going to show you how I use my grinder. So let me pull that over, and then we'll get started while the bread is baking. Okay. Now, I've put my grinder over here, which you have seen me use this before, and hopefully you'll see me use it again, because I do use it quite a bit. Although I'm not real familiar with Vitamix, but I have heard people say that that can also do the same thing, but I do use this for my meat. So back to the turkey. This is still over here simmering away, so it's creating some really nice turkey broth for me, which I will put in my freezer. I might make some soup, and I'm also going to use it to help with my turkey pate. So I also have a little piece of chicken from the other night. I'm going to add that in to it. And what I do with the turkey breast, now turkey sometimes, you know, if you steam it a second time or try to cook it a second time, it just doesn't have quite the same flavor. So it's nice to do something different. This is a beautiful organic turkey breast, which I happen to love, but my family sometimes gets tired of them. And so I like to do things in a different way. And I want to cut it in strips so I can get it through my grinder. If you don't have a grinder, what you can do is you can just cut it into tiny little chunks. That's it. Or you can shred it. Just kind of depends on what you want to do, so you don't have to grind. But for me, this is just an easy way to get things done, and my family likes it and gives us a little something different. So anyway, once I have my turkey to the point where I can get it through my grinder, this is going to be a little noisy. I just run it through. See how it comes out. Alright, so once I have the grinder going, then I just take my pieces and I just stick them right down. And then you're going to have... like to add an onion into it. That's going to come out and mix right into the meat. So that's everything. You can see it's filled my bowl really nicely. I'm going to put this over here. And my broth is boiling, simmering, so I'm going to turn that down. But now this is an interesting secret. You know, a lot of people don't want to have a lot of mayonnaise in it, which I'm kind of one of those people, because, you know, it's dry, obviously. So what I do is I use a little bit of the broth. And this isn't as rich as I want, so I'm going to take a little bit of from the end of the turkey, from the drippings off the pan. I'm going to put this in here. And you can do this with your chicken. If you've cooked your chicken or your chicken breasts, or you can just boil them like this if you want, or simmer them, I should say, and then use a little bit of the broth. And what this does is it moistens everything without dumping a ton of mayonnaise on. And I like a little bit of mayonnaise, which I will use some for a seasoning. And also because I shredded the onion in there, that's going to give me a little bit of moisture. But it also kind of makes a light and fluffy pate. But it comes together really nicely. And again, it's just a little different way of eating things. But it really was a beautiful turkey breast. But as I said, you can do this with chicken. Now, different people like different things cut into it. Mine's going to be kind of a plain one, in my opinion, but you can add different seasonings that you happen to like with either your turkey or your chicken breast. And you can, instead of grinding your onion in, again, you don't have to grind. If you don't have a grinder, just cut very small or shred. And then you can chop some onion up into it as well. Sometimes a little mustard is a nice flavoring. Pickles, depending upon your preference. Dill pickles you can use. This is for my bread. You can use dill pickles, or you can use sweet pickles. That adds a nice flavoring. Some people like to chop in hard-boiled eggs, which again, you can put that right through your grinder if you have one, or you can squish it up in there with a fork. So I'm going to put a little bit more of my sauce in there. And let's see how that bread is doing. Well, we have a minute. Let me grab a pot holder and see if that's done. Oh, looks like it might be. Oh, okay, here we go. So, listen. You hear how it sounds hollow? That's how you know if it's done. I always double check the bottom. It should be browned, and if it's not, let's take a look. Yeah, nicely browned as well. So these are really beautiful loaves. And as I said, you know, it's called a peasant bread. It's really nice. It's not expensive to make. It's extremely easy to make. I'm going to use a little bit of cow butter because that's what Stewart likes. You can put olive oil on the top. You can use goat butter on the top. Or you can use any type of fats that you want, or you can leave it. But to me, it gives it a little nicer crust. If you like a crisper crust, you can leave it bake longer. This took about 15-20 minutes. And yeah, my timer was set for 15 minutes. And then let's take a look inside. Set turkey plate aside for a minute. And let's take a look inside here. Now what I like to do, again, I'm going to tell you, if I'm serving this for dinner, after my guests have sat down and starting to fill their plates, that's when I like to put this in to bake, so when it comes out and they're ready for their bread, it's nice and hot, and the butter melts beautifully. That's the time to do it. See how nice it is inside. You see that? It's really nice, and it's steaming hot. It's going to melt their butter. And you can cut it like, open it this way. It's almost too hot yet for my hands, like a little pocket. I'll put some butter in here for Stewart because he likes the ends a little crispier, and this is the cow butter right in there. Or you can cut in more in what I would call a round. This is a really light, fluffy loaf. But as I said, sometimes it does not, it may only raise half this much. It's just a little bit more dense. So you can do it like this, and I'll put a little goat butter on there, and you'll see how easily that melts. And there is nothing like bread fresh from the oven, so you can do that, and then you can put whatever garnishes that you have. But anyway, it's a beautiful bread, and it's extremely easy to do. So let me set this aside, and we'll finish up our turkey pate, because when I'm done with the turkey pate, I'm going to have the turkey pate and a piece of bread. So let's just set this aside for a second. And I'm going to turn my oven, oh, let me check my other, maybe it's enough so I can stick it in. You can see how it's growing. I'll bake that in probably another 5 minutes or so after I'm done with you. So let's see how the turkey pate is doing. And again, remember, I'm moistening it with my broth versus moistening it with the mayonnaise. And I mentioned pickles. You may want to put a little pickle juice in there. That will also help to moisten. If you choose to put in the hard-boiled eggs, that will help to moisten it as well. And believe it or not, when this is done, you can freeze it. Even with mayonnaise, I have frozen it before, although I would suggest maybe it's best to freeze it before you put the mayonnaise in the freezer, but that's usually just the broth. So after you have unthawed it, then just mix it all together, and you will never know. It tastes like it's fresh made. And if you're going to freeze it, now's the time. Don't wait until 2 or 3 days down the road. Freeze it now while it's fresh if you have too much. Remember, this is just one turkey breast. I had maybe the equivalent of one chicken breast I added, but you can see it's quite a large portion. So I'm going to put in just a little bit more broth because I don't like it too dry. And then I'm going to add a little bit of flavoring with the mayonnaise for my family. Not a lot, but just a little. Oops. Piece of stuff from the bottom of my turkey pan. And like I said, don't be afraid of turkeys if you're only one person, because you can freeze them, you can do other things with it. It's a good excuse to have company in. I mean, just take care of yourself. Don't sit there wishing, oh, I wish I had this or I wish I had that, but I'm only one person, blah, blah. You know what? Make a friend or befriend yourself. Or you know what? At one point in my life, I used to make a whole turkey and share it with my cats. So, you know, life changes. You do what you need to do for yourself. Take care of you. That's the important thing. But don't do without. That's not a good pattern to start. Okay, mayonnaise. Let me get a fresh spoon because I don't want to put I'm just going to put in a couple tablespoons. And I am going to put in some salt. Oops, I guess this is my pepper. Sprinkle my pepper across the top. Dropsy-day. Salt. Probably about 1/2 to 3/4 of a teaspoon. You can always add more later. I like a bit of spice, so here's my famous red pepper bag from Cindy. And I put a little bit of that in. And I'm going to put in a few drops of hot sauce. That just gives it a bit of a zing. Not really going to change the flavor, but it perks it up a little bit. And you can't really see it when you stir it all in. And then if you want, as I said, a little mustard, a little pickles. You know, you can use your imagination. Oops, here comes Buddy. He thinks he wants the pepper cap. I'm sorry, Buddy. All right, here we go. And then when this is all done, I'm just going to chop in a little bit of celery because I'm very fortunate. Cindy has some celery that she's growing in her greenhouse, and it gives it just a little bit of crunch, and it also breaks up the smooth flavor, which I like. Not everybody is going to like that addition. But you can see how nice it is. It's not too heavy. You can even hear it as I'm stirring it. It's light. And if you want a lighter dish that's easy, as I said, you can put it in your freezer. Take care of you first. And let me come over here and chop up just a little bit of my celery. Add in. Take off the bottom. Now, when I slice, I like it really kind of thin. You may like bigger chunks, but it's already, remember, very smooth. So I just slice my celery, depending on how big the celery pieces are, into 3 or 4 long pieces. And then I put everything together. I'm only going to do 2, even though I got out 3. Depends on how I feel. And then I just kind of dice mine very... This is the size I like. You may like a different size. Alright, and once you've got your desired amount, just go mix it in. And like I said, for me it just gives it a little bit of crunch. A little something different. It's a nice color. You want to serve it on your bread rounds like we talked about. You can put a few drops of the red pepper on top of it to kind of give it a pretty look. As you can see, you can't really see the hot sauce I use. You can't see the red pepper, but it does kind of give it a little extra zing without really being spicy. Most people wouldn't even know you put that in there. And but like I said, if you want, you can dress it up when you serve it. It just makes nice hors d'oeuvres. And probably if I was freezing it, I would put the celery in later because the celery will turn a little soft in your freezer. But basically, you know, you have a really nice, easy little dish to have for an appetizer, for your main dish. You can also put this on lettuce greens, and you can have a nice salad. You can put it in a taco shell if that's your thing. I mean, there are a lot of things that you can do with a little bit of imagination. And remember, it doesn't have to turn out looking like mine. It needs to turn out looking like yours. So I want to thank you for joining me for another edition of Cooking with Janet. I want you to go do some cooking, have fun with what you're doing, don't put pressure on yourself, and enjoy, because what you ingest really is your emotions. Guilt, I'm sorry, it's going to go straight to weight, it's going to go to your hips, it's going to go to your belly, it's going to go to places you don't want it to do. So if you're going to eat it, enjoy, release the guilt, be happy, and your food is going to make a major difference in how your body responds. Take care, bye-bye.